On February 14, 2026, 5 European nations made a joint announcement at the Munich Security Conference that stunned the world. After 2 years of forensic investigation, they had identified the substance that killed Alexei Navalny in a Russian Arctic prison. It was not a nerve agent. It was not a radioactive isotope. It was a toxin produced by a tiny frog found only in the cloud forests of Ecuador, a substance so potent that 2 grains of table salt weighing the same amount could kill a grown man. This is the story of how nature's deadliest molecule became a weapon of assassination. Alexei Navalny was the one person Vladimir Putin could never silence. A lawyer turned anti-corruption activist, Navalny built a massive following by exposing the staggering wealth hidden by Putin's inner circle. His 2021 documentary Putin's Palace revealed a $1 billion estate on the Black Sea complete with a casino, theater, and vineyard. It was watched over 130 million times. Navalny organized the largest anti-government protests Russia had seen in decades. He ran for president. He built a network of regional offices across Russia that functioned as an opposition party. The Kremlin tried everything to stop him. They barred him from elections. They raided his offices. They jailed his supporters. But Navalny kept going. In August 2020, on a flight from Tomsk to Moscow, Navalny collapsed and fell into a coma. He had been poisoned with Novichok, a military-grade nerve agent developed by Russia's own chemical weapons program. Germany confirmed it. France confirmed it. Sweden confirmed it. Navalny survived only because the pilot made an emergency landing and paramedics administered atropine within minutes. After recovering in Berlin, Navalny made the decision that shocked the world. He went back to Russia. He was arrested the moment he landed and sentenced to 19 years in prison. But if they thought prison walls would contain him, they were fatally wrong. On February 16, 2024, Russia's Federal Penitentiary Service announced that Alexei Navalny had died at the IK-3 Polar Wolf Penal Colony above the Arctic Circle. They said he lost consciousness after a walk and could not be resuscitated. They listed the cause of death as cardiac arrhythmia. The world reacted with immediate suspicion. Navalny was 47 years old. He had survived a confirmed assassination attempt just 3 years earlier. He had spent 300 cumulative days in solitary confinement and was serving his 27th stretch in solitary when he died. The day before his death, he appeared via video link at a court hearing, made jokes, and appeared healthy. His widow Yulia Navalnaya accused Putin directly, saying he killed my husband. For 6 days, Russian authorities refused to release the body. Behind the scenes, something remarkable was happening. Navalny's family managed to obtain biological samples and secretly smuggle them out of Russia to Western laboratories. In September 2024, Navalnaya announced that 2 independent labs had confirmed poisoning, but she did not name the toxin. The full investigation would take 2 years. What they found was a substance so exotic that it initially confused the toxicologists. It was not a chemical weapon. It was not synthetic. It came from a frog. Epibatidine is a naturally occurring alkaloid with a molecular structure so elegant that it fooled scientists for decades. It was first isolated in 1974 by National Institutes of Health chemist John Dolly, who extracted it from the skin of a tiny Ecuadorian frog. From 750 frog skins, he obtained roughly 1 milligram. For years, researchers were thrilled about its potential as a painkiller. It bound to nicotinic acetylcholine receptors in the brain with extraordinary precision, blocking pain signals 200 times more effectively than morphine. Unlike opioids, it was not addictive. Pharmaceutical companies invested millions trying to develop it into a drug. They all failed. The reason was devastating. The difference between the dose that kills pain and the dose that kills the patient is almost zero. Epibatidine's therapeutic index is essentially non-existent. At pain-killing doses, it causes seizures, respiratory paralysis, and cardiac arrest. Just 1.4 micrograms per kilogram of body weight is lethal. For an average adult, that is roughly 100 micrograms. A single grain of table salt weighs about 60 micrograms. 2 grains of salt worth of Epibatidine will kill you. Death occurs within minutes as the receptors throughout the nervous system are overwhelmed. The heart stops. The lungs stop. The brain shuts down, and unlike nerve agents that leave obvious chemical signatures, Epibatidine is a natural compound that degrades quickly. Until this investigation, standard toxicology screens did not even test for it. The only known natural source of Epibatidine is a tiny frog called Epibatidine anthony, also known as Anthony's poison arrow frog. It lives in the cloud forests of southwestern Ecuador and northwestern Peru at elevations up to 1,700 meters. It is barely 2 centimeters long. You could fit it on your thumbnail. Its skin is dark brown with bright red or orange racing stripes running down its back. Indigenous peoples in Ecuador have used poison dart frogs for centuries, rubbing the tips of blow darts across the frogs' backs before hunting. But Epibatidine anthony is not even the most toxic frog in the world. That title belongs to the golden poison frog, whose batrachotoxin is so potent that simply touching one can kill you. What makes Epibatidine special is the specific chemistry of Epibatidine, and here is a fact that makes biologists uncomfortable. The frogs do not actually produce the toxin themselves. They acquire it from their diet, specifically from tiny arthropods, mites, and ants that live on the forest floor. Frogs raised in captivity on fruit flies are completely non-toxic. This is a critical forensic detail. It means Epibatidine cannot be harvested from captive frogs. It must either be collected from wild populations or synthesized in a laboratory. The first successful chemical synthesis was achieved in 1993, and that is exactly where Russia's chemical weapons establishment enters the story. Russia has a long and documented history of using exotic poisons to eliminate enemies of the state. In 2006, Alexander Litvinenko, a former FSB agent turned whistleblower, was killed in London with polonium-210, a radioactive isotope so rare that producing it requires a nuclear reactor. They slipped it into his tea. He died over 3 agonizing weeks as the radiation destroyed his body from the inside. The European Court of Human Rights ruled Russia responsible beyond reasonable doubt. A British inquiry concluded the murder was probably approved by Putin himself. In 2018, Sergei Skripal, a former Russian double agent living in England, and his daughter Yulia were poisoned in Salisbury with Novichok, a military-grade nerve agent developed in Soviet weapons laboratories. Both survived. But Dawn Sturgess, a British woman who found the discarded perfume bottle containing the Novichok, did not. In 2020, it was Navalny's turn with Novichok applied to his underwear. He survived. The pattern is clear. Each operation uses a different substance: polonium, Novichok, dioxin, which left Ukrainian President Viktor Yushchenko's face permanently scarred in 2004. Each poison is more exotic than the last. Each is chosen specifically because it is difficult to detect and difficult to attribute. After the Skripal scandal triggered massive diplomatic expulsions, Russia needed something that could not be traced back to a military lab. They needed something natural. The investigation that exposed Epibatidine as the murder weapon was a coordinated effort by intelligence and forensic agencies from the United Kingdom, France, Germany, Sweden, and the Netherlands. Germany led the toxicological analysis, building on their experience from analyzing Navalny's 2020 Novichok poisoning at the Charite Hospital in Berlin. The UK's Porton Down Laboratory, which had identified the Novichok used on the Skripals, conducted parallel testing. The breakthrough came when investigators developed a new screening protocol specifically designed to detect rare alkaloid compounds in degraded biological samples. Standard toxicology screens test for hundreds of common poisons and drugs. Epibatidine was not on any standard panel. Using high-resolution liquid chromatography and mass spectrometry, they identified trace amounts of Epibatidine and its metabolic byproducts in the preserved tissue samples. The concentrations were consistent with a lethal dose. On February 14, 2026, the five nations issued their joint statement at the Munich Security Conference. They declared that the evidence pointed conclusively to deliberate poisoning and noted that synthesizing pharmaceutical-grade Epibatidine requires sophisticated laboratory equipment and expertise in alkaloid chemistry, capabilities consistent with a state-level actor. They specifically noted that Russia's Institute of Organic Chemistry and Technology, the same institute that developed Novichok nerve agents, has reportedly synthesized Epibatidine. Russia dismissed the findings as politically motivated fabrication, but the evidence had been independently verified by 5 national laboratories. The choice of Epibatidine reveals how Russia's assassination program has evolved. After polonium and Novichok both triggered international scandals and diplomatic expulsions, the Kremlin needed something that could not be easily traced. Nerve agents leave distinctive chemical signatures. Radioactive isotopes leave radiation trails that can be followed across continents. Epibatidine offered something fundamentally different. As a natural compound found in Ecuadorian frogs, it provides an inherent layer of deniability. The substance degrades quickly in the body. Standard toxicology screens do not test for it, and its natural origin allows Russia to claim it cannot be definitively linked to a state weapons program, but context destroys that deniability. Navalny was in a maximum security Arctic penal colony. There are no poison dart frogs above the Arctic Circle. Epibatidine cannot be purchased legally. The synthetic route requires multi-step organic chemistry that only a handful of laboratories worldwide can perform. France's Foreign Minister Jean-Noël Barrot put it bluntly, "We now know that Vladimir Putin is prepared to use biological weapons against his own people in order to remain in power." Britain's Foreign Secretary, Yvette Cooper, added, "Only the Russian government had the means, motive, and opportunity to deploy this lethal toxin. Intelligence analysts believe Russia may have developed an entire program around natural toxins following the Skripal fallout. If that is true, Navalny's death is not just an assassination. It is a proof of concept. The confirmation of Epibatidine has triggered a cascade of diplomatic consequences." The 5 nations referred Russia to the Organization for the Prohibition of Chemical Weapons, alleging breaches of both the Chemical Weapons Convention and the Biological and Toxin Weapons Convention. They requested an independent fact-finding mission. The European Union is considering new targeted sanctions against Russian intelligence officials and entities linked to chemical and biological weapons research. The United States called the findings very troubling and very serious, with Secretary of State Marco Rubio stating, "We have no reason to question them." But the broader question is whether proof changes anything. Litvinenko's killers were identified but never extradited. The Skripal poisoners were identified by name and face but remain free in Russia. The pattern suggests that exposure alone does not equal accountability. Yulia Navalnaya, who has continued her husband's political work from exile, called the findings bittersweet. She said, at the time, they were just words. Today those words have become scientifically proven facts. Putin killed Alexei with a chemical weapon. The forensic capability demonstrated in this case. Detecting a frog alkaloid in degraded Arctic tissue samples 2 years after death sends its own message. You can use nature's most obscure poisons. We will still find them. A tiny frog from the cloud forests of Ecuador. A toxin 200 times more powerful than morphine, a political prisoner in an Arctic colony, and 5 nations that spent 2 years unraveling one of the most sophisticated assassinations in modern history. The science is extraordinary. The implications are terrifying. Should there be real consequences, or will this become another assassination the world condemns but never punishes? Tell me what you think in the comments, and share this video with someone who needs to understand what just happened.